This is Hablemos, Escritoras, the largest podcast and encyclopedia dedicated to women writers of Hispanic heritage, as well as translators, critics, and editors. We are passionate about listening to their stories, learning from their work and projects, and reading and celebrating their remarkable books. Visit us at hablemosescritoras.org, explore our YouTube channel for book presentations and special conversations, and find us on all major podcast platforms. And follow us in social media and subscribe to our newsletter. Today, thanks to the invitation of Amy Wright and East Carolina University, we have the opportunity to speak and learn from Dailihana Alfonseca, an Afro-Caribbean and American writer whose work moves between poetry and prose, exploring identity, language, and memory. In this episode, we dive into her creative process, the spaces her writing inhabits, and the powerful intersections that shape her voice. Welcome, y estamos seguros de que disfrutarán este episodio que hemos preparado para ustedes. Yo soy Adriana Pacheco y sean bienvenidos. So now we are in this beautiful place at East Carolina University. Then I couldn't imagine that I was going to have this beautiful room and two gentlemen here that are helping us and trying really to set a place with these purple colors and the yellow letters of the name of this university in Greenville, North Carolina. And I am seated here with Dailihana, is that the right way to pronounce it?
La H no se dice.
No se dice.
Dailihana.
Dailihana
Alfonseca.
Alfonseca. And this is going to be an interview mixing Spanish and English because that's our lives. Yeah. So we can stop that. It's so crazy, no? Yeah. Bienvenida. Yeah. Thank you. You took your car and you drove all the way till here. So ¿cuánto tiempo, my love?
3 hours.
3 hours. Oh my goodness.
And you don't get, this is my dream. I get to live my dream.
This is my dream.
Oh.
If somebody has read your work, can imagine that I am so excited. It moved me a lot. Yeah, especially, and we will talk about that. No, but the switching between poetry and prose is not easy. It is not easy. Not everybody can do that. Yeah, congratulations, Dailihana. Okay, now I say it. Yeah, it sounds very Puerto Rican, ¿no? Es
Puerto Rico, el nombre de mi mamá era Viliana.
Ah.
Y ella se dijo que she's going to name her daughter after herself.
Yeah. So tell me, where are you from? You are from Puerto Rico, or you are from the United States, or you are from the Carolinas, the Carolina?
Yeah.
Where are you from?
Okay, so it's a funny story. Yo nací en San Juan, Puerto Rico, y mi mamá es de una principal, like a district there que se llama Carolina Country Club. Now, she's like, I'm from Carolina Country Club. That's what she would say. Yo soy de Carolina Country Club de Puerto Rico. That's what she would tell people when she would introduce herself. And so when I write about how I'm a Carolinian, I literally mean I'm like a legacy of living in the Carolinas. You know, when I was in the military, I was at Fort Bragg in North Carolina, and then now I live in South Carolina, and it's like anchored me to America in some way, like, right? Because Puerto Rico is a U.S. possession, right? And I'm from a place called Carolina. Yeah, now I'm in the Carolinas, and I got my education in the Carolinas.
That is so nice. Tell us about the time you were at the army with the military. It was like an important part in your life, no?
It was. It really. So I joined the military primarily because I was really afraid to mess up my life, if I'm being honest. You know, my mother had just passed away from a brain tumor. You see at the end of that film is accurate, right? I had just lost my mother, and she had died of a brain tumor. And, you know, my mother went to college and ended up pregnant with me and had to drop out of college. And I was afraid of making the same mistake. So instead I joined the military and subsequently did end up getting married and having a child and having to get out so that I could better my life. And I returned to college, right? Because my mother always told me, you know, I brought you here so you could be educated.
Yeah.
And I made sure that, like, I've continuously kept returning to college to finish. And now I have a master's. I'm thinking of going back for an MFA in creative writing, but I don't know, tired.
Yeah.
I wanna just write.
You have time. Don't worry.
Yeah. I just want to write. So yeah.
Exactly. Now is writing.
Now I get to write. Yeah.
Yes. And how? How did you discover that?
So I've always written in poetic form, right? Because I think you had mentioned that you're like, poetry blends really well with your prose. I've always written in poetics, and I didn't pull it out into prose until I went to Frances Marion. And Dr. Landon Houle, who's a spectacular writer herself within her own right, and she gave me my position at the Raleigh Review way back when. She was like my teacher in that class, and she really taught me how stories happen, what to look for in a story, how writers blend their reality, religion, tradition, culture, history into a film and into a story and into architecture and into everything, right? She's like, everything that we make up is based on our reality.
Yeah.
Right. And I remember being in her class, and I wanted, initially when I started writing, I wanted to be a Goosebumps writer for kids. Like I wanted to make like a Latina Goosebumps, right? Una colección de historias para niños que está en la legacía de nuestra cultura.
El miedo.
Yeah, el miedo, la llorona, like all that, like reinventions of all of those myths in Latin America. Of course. El chupacabra, right? Yeah, like we've all heard of these things.
Los mexicanos lo hicimos.
Like, so it was one of those things that I was like, oh, that's what I'm going to do. And when I got to Frances Marion, I started writing, and she was like, this isn't you.
It was too poetic.
It wasn't poetic. It wasn't poetic. It didn't make sense. And then she asked us it was the last paper of the semester. It was the last assignment of the semester. Y ella me dijo, quiero que trates de hablar como tú misma. Porque cuando tú me hablas a mí, yo te entiendo. Lo que tú dices es bello. Quiero que tú me hables así cuando tú escribes. And then I was walking my dogs and my feet hurt. And I go, there used to be more fat between the earth and my bones. And like that line stuck in my head for days before finalmente la puse con pluma y la escribí.
That's amazing. That is amazing. Now you know why I was so happy when Amy Wright just sent me an email one day and said, like, do you want to come to North Carolina to interview these 4 writers? And I said, like, what? Is this like a dream? It's like my birthday present? It was exactly the same. So tell me about this. So this night we will have a beautiful event at a public library, Shepherd Library. Yeah. Really, really nice. And we are going to talk about a topic that might sound simple, but it is not. You are writing from the South. And the South is a very special region in the United States. No, actually, I don't have any recall of people talking about the North, no, or the Central, or the Mid.
Yeah. The way they talk about the South.
Exactly. America. Completely different, completely unique. What is for you to live here, to be writing here? That the borders are close, this mix between races, this mix between traditions and food, and I don't know, people. No, tell me.
That's a very difficult question to answer. Y solamente porque en mi comunidad, it's so complicated. It's so layered. I can't even begin. Let me start here. When I moved to the South was the first time I felt beautiful. It was the first time I felt seen. My introduction to the South, I was raised in New England, in Massachusetts and New York, respectively. And, I was educated there. But I eventually had to relocate to the South after my mother passed away, right? And I moved to Miami. It was not the real South, right? It was an amalgamation of beautiful cultures, beautiful people, different colors, different sizes, different shapes, of like so many different communities coexisting amongst one another, right?
Yeah.
And moving there, I was the first place, where I wasn't competing with white beauty. It was the first place where I felt like myself. It was the first place where everyone noticed me for being me. Not for performing a specific way, right? Not for being intelligent, not for like having to be able to speak very well, not for, being able to get good grades or to look, like I'm supposed to look, right? Instead there, like people were just like, you're cool for being you. You're just you. And that's enough. And it was the first place where I was seen and heard and made to feel important. So my introduction to the South isn't the typical, much like my academic career, is not the typical introduction into the South. Over time, Black women took me into their fold and taught me about Black survivability in the South, right? Through the military, right? I met the majority of my Black girlfriends are from my time in the military. And they were like, come girl, come on, hang out with us. You a baddie. I'm a baddie too. And they taught me I was pretty.
That's so beautiful. And you have said something that I think that is very important, and this term has to be coined. All this idea of being a migrant requires a kind of sturdiness. When your family has been here in the country for centuries. It's different when we come from other countries and then arrive to a new country and a new continent. And that mix in the military also allows that you had contact with Hispanics, which are in different situations, but at the same time, the same, What do you think about that also? Because Hispanics and Latinos come into the conversation also when we are talking about the South.
All the time. So what I learned in the South about Latinos is that we are hard workers. We survive, we overcome, we build, we provide. I never saw the same pictures that the media showed of us in, at home. I saw people who got up every day and made lives happen for children around them, for people around them, right? So at the same time that the Black community was accepting me and was taking me into their fold, my Latina identity was coming to the fruition that, I come from a culture of people who constantly work to survive and to make do and to provide and to do more with every generation, right? And it's difficult to say that, I wasn't kind of living in a double consciousness, right? I was constantly, and sometimes in a triple consciousness when I was in New England, right? Because I would have to be around 3 different kinds of people at all times.
Yeah. Beautiful how you say it. So let's move to literature and books and writing. You know what? Dailihana has a talent of titles. Just listen to this. Spanish soap operas killed my mother. So how do you think about these telenovelas? Because I remember when I was a girl, for my mother was forbidden to watch telenovelas. But my mother had to work. And so I stayed at home, with a nanny, and she was fantastic, and she allowed me to watch all las telenovelas, todas. Okay, but when we heard that my mother was coming, so we had to turn off the TV, and quite writing in that way. And do you think that today these telenovelas, these operas continue having that impact and influence, especially in women, that are the most, also men?
We're the largest buying power in the world. Women are definitely the ones who are consuming the most. Yes, absolutely.
Tell us about writing that, and tell us more about your feeling that telenovelas is still so important.
Cuando yo me estaba criando, mi mamá siempre estaba viendo Telemundo, Univisión, y mi abuela también. Y había Luz Clarita, y Dos Mujeres, Un Camino, y, like all these different tumultuous stories that I, in my real life, saw actually reflected, right? Yo vi a una mujer con una agria en el cuerpo porque el esposo de ella le había pegado los cuernos across the street, y she went over there and she sliced that woman's face open.
Oh my God.
I saw that happen. Oh yeah, as a little girl. Yes, really. I saw a lot of violence because of passion. I saw a lot of the horrible things take place that, like, you look at a telenovela and you're like, oh my God, she just lost her whole life. She's on the streets. She's, Maria del Barrio, like all those horrible things. I saw that happening in real life. And I thought, this is the only reflection of me there is. And my mother only reflected that tumultuality in her life, right? So when I say telenovelas killed my mother, I mean these media representations often imbue us with the subconscious idea of who we are supposed to be, when really we are so much more than these stories of poverty and these stories of trauma, and we can overcome and make those things beautiful. Right? And that's the purpose of like bringing the media into it and playing with the idea that like my mother was cursed by the media she consumed. That's where I really dug into that idea.
I'm going to tell you a secret. So the only way you can read this lady is aloud. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. I read the whole thing aloud. It was, because
I tell my students all the time, read your work out loud.
Yes, because the crossing between two genres is very, very complicated.
Thank you.
Poems have a rhythm, prose has a different rhythm, but you did so nice. What do you read to write in this way?
Everything.
And exactly.
Everything. I don't, even if I don't like it, I finish it. If I open a book and it wasn't what I was supposed to think it was, I'm going to finish that book. I need to find out what's in there anyhow. Everything important that you need to know is in a book. Todo lo que tú necesitas, toda la magia del mundo está en un libro.
Sí. And many times what I have the feeling is writers are not reading enough in the way we used to read, and I am happy.
We used to sequester ourselves. We used to be selfish.
Yeah.
We need to go back to being a little selfish. Just in the best way possible. Sequester yourself in a room and read a book in a day. See if you can do it.
Yeah. Yes. Or at least 20 minutes every single day. Every single day. There are a couple of paragraphs that I would like to record your voice.
You have the paragraphs?
I do.
We live someplace colder now. A place where immigrants landed just like us. Mommy's body begins to wither in the wintry embrace of her illness. Yet she continues her fairy tale and hides her expiration date. She flees again, leaving the iguanas to cross the oceans, highways, and certain death for her. Soon, Abuelita is dead. There is no more yelling on the phone about how hecha y derecha she is. She has no one to explain her freedoms and liberties to. Gone is the great matriarchal hope. Esperanza is no more. I am no one here, except the girl who came from the place we all came from.
Just picture this. You have a girl that is struggling with her own life. But at the same time, you have a mother that also is struggling in that very complicated line that we women have. No, you have to be a mother, you have to be perfect, you have to be an example. And at the same time, you're a woman. You have desire, you have a body. No, you have your own dreams. And the conversation is complicated. And you have a third woman in that conversation, which is the grandmother. Mm. And the grandmother is like the guardian also of that home, of that place. Tell us about that triangle. How do you feel that these women impact your own life while writing the part of your story in this fiction?
My mother's relationship with her mother was always complicated. That's all I remember. Much like many of us, we often end up in contentious situations where we disappoint the people who are trying to raise us like they're us, right? And the grandmother that I received was not the mother she received, and that's never the reality. La abuela mía no es madre de ella. Y la madre de ella no es madre mía, you know, like that.
Bien lo dices.
You know, like, ser abuela es diferente de ser madre. Y ella me trató a mí diferente que la trató ella. So la relación de ella con su mamá y la relación de yo con mi abuela es diferente. And that was that triangle because she was doing to me exactly what my grandmother did to her. And causing that cycle to you know, I've had to do a lot of work in therapy to not do that to my own daughter. You know, to bring her into the fold without scarring her the way I was scarred.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And you cannot demand your mother or your grandmother to behave in a different way, no? Yeah. The story continues, goes on. And then you see this girl turning into a woman. And she has other influences. And she has to cross that very complicated line that is noticing that the race is important. And that the boys could be cruel, other girls could be cruel. And she isolates her from the mother. No.
Okay.
That is a message. Do you think that writing today is also a message for your readers to understand that everybody goes through situations that could be the same?
Absolutely.
Or maybe not. No.
Yeah.
But do you think about that you are also giving something to your readers? No?
I never read anything that made me feel like somebody understood where I came from. You know, I never read maybe some and the ones that I did read were always male dominated, right? It's always Piri Tomás, and there was this other one that was called the Making of a Latin King, and these were these stories about these individuals from Chicago and New York, and they went through similar things, went through street life, went through all of that, but you know, there was nothing written by a woman that felt like she like that kind of story, right? And especially because we don't read those kinds of stories. Those stories are kind of ugly. Like kind of ugly. Sorry to say about like to the dudes.
Yeah.
The stories are kind of ugly. Why would I make an ugly story about an ugly thing?
I love it. I love it.
Why would I do that to the people who I know need to feel empathy
Yeah.
and care, and not like this like, and I'm sorry to say this, but trauma porn, representation of what my life is, So why not make it beautiful? Why not make it so that when you read it, it speaks to your soul.
Yeah.
It makes you move.
Yeah.
It brings something out of you that you forgot you had.
Yeah. And at the same time, you also focus in a very specific space and area that many times the camera doesn't go there.
No.
No?
No.
Yeah. And they don't go into the houses.
No. And they don't go into the cars, and they don't go into the kitchens, and they don't go into those places. They pan over them.
Exactly.
Yeah. They're just background actors, right? But they're really a part of our life.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're main characters.
Tell me about silence. Because that is also something that you are using in the story. The silence that is not silent, but you can feel that there is not a conversation. No,
Yeah.
the conversation
Is over.
is over.
Yeah.
Just stop.
I know.
No.
That comes from always feeling that in my household, children were to be seen, not heard. Those conversations were not had. I saw my mother go through these things, but she never spoke to me about these things. We see these things happening, and nobody tells us, this is womanhood, this is adulthood, these are these things. Nadie me explicó a mí que el estrés de pagar biles. Pero yo sabía toda la información porque yo era la única en la casa que podía hablar 2 idiomas. Y yo sabía que cuando iban a pagar la luz, cuando no iban a quitar los beneficios, cuando no iban a tirar de la casa. Y yo se lo necesitaba explicar a ella. Y ella, ¿por qué tú no le dices lo que te estoy diciendo? Yo se lo estoy diciendo. Ellos no entienden que tú no tienes el dinero y que le vas a pagar el mes que viene. Ellos no quieren oír eso. And it was constant, uncomfortable, difficult conversations that I had with her as a child, but it was adult topics. But then I couldn't bring those topics up because I didn't understand them.
Because you spoke both languages.
Because I spoke.
So you were the bridge.
I was the bridge.
Between one
with everything.
Exactly. One reality and the other, no? Which is inside of the house, speaking Spanish. But the girl that has the ability to speak both languages is always helping adults to understand their reality.
Yeah.
That is big. That is big.
When you are the same story across many children.
Exactly.
There are so many children who are doing this exact same thing. There's so many adults who have already done that.
Exactly. And at the same time, they don't want to accept that they cannot speak English. No? Yeah, because it's complicated when you don't have the opportunity to learn a language since where you were. Exactly. It's hard later. So we have been talking about women, but men are very important.
Men are so important. It's a conversation.
And just imagine the next title. And Dailihana, how did you understand? It's just, you have to tell us this.
Yes.
Okay, the name is going to be Merengues, Murder My Father. Okay, so tell us about, because, and you have to explain what merengue is, because merengue could be in Spanish many things.
Many things.
Okay.
Many things. Okay, so I began thinking of this story. So my father was murdered when I was a little girl.
Oh my
That's why we left Puerto Rico. Yes. And it is
so.
It is a legacy of me understanding my father through music and understanding the relationship that he had with my mother and how he was in a same.
What were you when they?
Oh, around 4 or 5. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I remember because we lived in the same place where I learned to do mathematics. Learn English. That's where I became the bridge, and it happened around that space, right? So, he was murdered, and we moved, and I had to become very adultified very quickly. So it's a time in my life where it's very cemented, and over the years, music has been one of the few forms where I saw poetry be performed across every language, every culture, every ethnicity. I mean, our bodies are rhythmic things that have existed and pre-existed things like religion and culture and the cultures that we exist in today. Drums are the oldest form of you can make a drum from anything. It's these are things that speak to us because this is a part of us. It's part of all of us.
Yeah.
You know, and I try to constantly bridge the gap between different immigrant stories. I tell people, like, just like the father of obstetrics, right, the OBGYN movement in the South, he operated on enslaved Black women. But when he moved to New York, he did it on Irish immigrant women, right? Those are immigrant stories, right? Within that time frame, they were us, and we are them. Yeah. What does it mean that they don't have a voice then, and now we don't have a voice? Why can't we find those bridges ourselves?
Mm-hmm. So important. So you are working on this work, but also you are writing in other places.
Yes.
No, are you trying to talk about women and men in all your writings? Because you are not only writing fiction or sort of fiction.
Yeah.
You are also writing essays and other genres.
I'm not a good essayist. I'll be very frank. My composition, poop. Okay, like I prefer to write the way I speak. I often orate my papers, you know, and I'm constantly being told when I get feedback on my essays that, you know, I'm not performing academic ivory tower as good as they need me to. But I'm not writing for them. I'm writing for the people who know how to dance salsa and samba and know how to move their hips and know how to speak in a musical way. You know, our souls are connecting with my writing, and that's all that really matters to me, right? I'm writing for the people where I come from.
That is beautiful. That is beautiful. Have you ever thought about writing to children or young people?
I have, yeah. So the first time I ever wrote, it was a short story.
Spooky story.
Not the spooky story. The first time I ever wrote like an actual book length something, it was a gift to my daughter. And I was, at the time I was living in my car. I was sleeping on a friend's couch and I was starting a new job. And it was a catalyst in my life that created a lot of peace because I had nothing to lose. So I invested a lot in my mental health, in my overall personal worth. And I started believing in myself in a delusional way. I mean, I would walk in fancy neighborhoods and tell my daughter, one day we're going to live in a place like this. I started being delusionally like in love with my life and believed in myself in a way that, you know, changed the trajectory, I feel, of where I ended up. And, you know, I'm writing so that like, I wrote that story for her in that time because I had nothing else to give her. And it was called Tomorrow You Turn 7. And it was this poetic journey of like all the things that she changed in my life because it was her. She changed me. It was my daughter, me becoming a mother, right? My womanhood that changed. Like, I need to be better for her. I need to go to therapy and fix whatever happened between me and my mother because I don't want my baby to feel that way about me. I need to, you know, better my life. I need to go back to school. I need to go back to school and show her that you can get a degree. You can be anything you put your mind to. You can accomplish any dream you have. And I need to show her that. Right. And so I wrote her that story and I read it to my sister and she was like, you need to become a writer. And that was the shift.
That is beautiful. The reason is amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, the reason is amazing. So let's talk about trauma. You just mentioned about your father. You mentioned also moving to another place, a different country.
And by the way, I lived in a different house every year of my life almost. We would move in the middle of the night. And I went to 4 different high schools.
Oh, my goodness. Okay. So
I'm a migrant. I'm a gypsy.
Yeah, you are a gypsy. Writing about trauma could be sometimes a little bit like a stereotype.
Yes, right? Like we were discussing earlier with the books.
Exactly. And it's commercial. It's a merchandise.
Yeah, people sell it. It sells. They love the story. Yeah.
And publishing houses are pushing writers to write more of that.
Tell us about the horrible life.
Exactly. What is for you to write trauma in the way that it could be trauma, but at the same time, it's hope?
Yes.
Tell us about it.
So the first time I tried to publish a story, I had an editor tell me that she wanted me to enhance the part about my father selling drugs. She wanted me to enhance it. And she didn't say it in so many words, but I could tell she was pushing for it with the editing feedback. Eventually, because I wouldn't budge, she snapped at me and she sort of cursed me out via email, right? And I brought it up to someone and they were like, are you sure that's what she said? And I showed them the entire email chain about how this woman had promised that we were going to work to edit this to publish me. And then she snapped at me to get me to back off when I wouldn't budge on the creative changes she wanted to make. This white woman. And so I kept, yeah. And so I brought it to my sister, the one who told me I should be a writer. And she was living with me because this is during COVID. I was editing this work. Y ella me dice, Dailihana, no cambies nada. No te pongas así para ella.
No te vendas.
No te vendes. No vendas nada. Esta historia es buena como es. Find somewhere else to publish it. They'll take it, I promise.
Yeah.
And that's how I ended up at Driftwood Press. And I won runner-up there. And then he just happened to say, hey, this is your first short story. Do you want to put in for this prize? And I ended up with the PEN America.
Oh, congratulations for that. That requires tener pantalones.
Thank you.
Exacto. Y bueno, en el sentido que nosotros usamos tener pantalones, porque ahora ya no se puede decir si tener pantalones o no tener pantalones, tener falda o vestido, lo que sea. So, do you want to read?
I was just waiting for you, please.
It's
like my dream, I told you.
Yeah, no, it's my dream. And I selected this one. You will enjoy the cadence of this paragraph. It's so beautifully written. Beautiful.
Oh, I remember this. I actually, when I lived in Lawrence, Massachusetts, that's when I was thinking about this. There's this place called Lawrence, Massachusetts. It was a mill town for immigrants. Yeah, Irish immigrants, German immigrants, Ukrainian. I mean, it was a crazy amount of Italian immigrants, all kinds of immigrants. And the last generation that's there now, the top population is Puerto Rican and Dominican. And it's all
El pot.
Yes, it's okay.
Everybody to be there.
And the river there would change the color that the mills were using. And that's where I got this idea from that history fact.
The indigo.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
The indigo blue textile of backbending labor and cerulean residue of bondage and conquest. Immigrant ants. Ancestor copycats. All of us. Tainos, Yorubas, Mayans, Aztecs, Pagans, Celtics, and Saxons alike. And all the other ancient places I went to that summer are scarred and pillaged and colonized by polytheistic deserters. I lived in this way for many moons and suns, a premature sapling in an open field. I floated, rustled, trickled over the city of Boston, and some days I still feel the city pummeling into me during my dreams. I search in her structure for memories of me. All that stirs back are the empty alleys I desperately try to forget.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I really love that paragraph. And I also thought that many times words, nouns, especially nouns, are so powerful. Because you can say that adjectives and adverbs, they build the whole paragraph and the structure, the grammatical structure of something. But nouns are things that you can see and touch. And especially when you are talking about people. No, that is really, really nice. Okay, so now what's going to happen? I'm going to ask you 3 questions. This is a challenge. You have to answer in one sentence.
Okay.
Later you can elaborate. Yeah, but the answer is going to be just
the answer forever.
So the first question is this. What is the strangest thing you do while you are writing?
The strangest thing I do while writing is try to fall asleep and stay awake and write with no barriers in a sleep-like state.
Okay, nice. That was a long sentence, but it was a nice answer. Beautiful. So next one. The next one is, what was the first piece of advice you received when you were considering becoming a writer?
Not to change my work.
That came from your sister. Yeah. Beautiful. And last one. Do you think about the reader while you are writing?
I am the reader. The reader is all of us.
Included you? Yeah, perfect. And the very last question, this is just to say thank you. This has been amazing, beautiful time with you. What do you feel and you expect from the meeting, the panel that we will have today? What do you want to put on the table, in front of that public? Right.
Being mixed race, we deserve space. You know, it's okay to be Latina and be different. It's okay to take up that space, to show up, to get the invite, to believe in yourself. Yeah. Be delusional.
Be delusional. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time and for driving all these 3.
If I was further away, I would drive even more. Okay, just for you.
What a beautiful conversation we had today with Dailihana Alfonseca. It has been a pleasure. Thank you to her and thank you to Amy Wright. Hablemos Escritoras es literatura, entrevistas, reseñas, audiolibros, documentales, traducción y la enciclopedia más grande del mundo en escritoras de origen hispanohablante. La producción de Hablemos Escritoras es por Adriana Pacheco y Andrea Macías. Edición de audio y masterización por Cristian Josefi. Preparación, coordinación, social media e imagen, Brenda Ortiz. Colaboradores del proyecto, Liliana Valenzuela, Francesca Denstedt, Anjane Delgado, Isabel Ibáñez de la Calle, Rosemary Salum, Teresa López Pelliza, Valeria Rey de Castro, Julia Santibáñez. Artista residente, Mitana Boykova Josefi. Difusión literaria y de proyectos, Alexander Boisin. La increíble imagen de Hablemos Escritoras es gracias a Enigma Diseño y nuestra poderosísima plataforma Nasolab. Yo soy Adriana Pacheco, todos los derechos reservados, Austin, Texas, 2026.